go down with one hand behind my back. I can crush your grizzly till its bones begin to crack. I eat a dozen T-bones for my early morning snack. So imagine what I could do to you. I could tear a telephone directory in two. Bending iron bars is something else that I can do. I always pick my teeth with the nearest billiard cue. So imagine what I could do to you. To see my many attributes won't need a second glance. You know if you resisted, you just wouldn't stand a chance. I can knock a hole right through a solid concrete wall. I can pull a tree out by its roots, and that's not all. Now you know about me, you don't need a crystal ball to tell you just what I could do to you. I thought of something already.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Retro Rasslin Recall here on the Retro Rasslin Network. I'm the king of all wrestling, Gene Jackson. Media, that is. King of all wrestling media. It's early, folks. Sorry. Along with my co-host, Broadcast Bob Anderson. How are you this morning, Bob?
Doing well, Gene. How about yourself?
Doing all right. Still trying to wake up. I didn't get much sleep, but we're up early this morning watching some exotic Adrian Street, the man who is our Spotlight Wrestler of the Month here on the Retro Rasslin Network, and a wrestler that we lost this year, and so I've been watching a lot of his matches for another project I got going on, and I told you, I said, you know what, we had someone else in mind for the Spotlight Wrestler this month, and I was like, you know what, we're going to go with Adrian Street, and I know he's somebody you're familiar with, but not overly familiar with. So thought it'd be fun to check out a few of his matches.
I know the backstory of Adrian Street, but when it comes to actually seeing his matches, sadly, I've mostly only seen the global stuff, which I know was more toward the end of his main run.
Ooh, yeah.
So I'm very excited to see these.
Not his best look. So here we are against Johnny Mantell. And this would be Mid-South 1984.
I actually like John Mantell quite a lot as well. So.
Well, I picked this match specifically because I thought that would be the case. But Adrian, like I say, I've been watching a lot of 85 Memphis for something I'm working with somebody else, and besides all the flamboyant, exotic Adrian type stuff, just his ring style in general, that British style, is very unique and really stands out to me.
Yeah, I mean, back in that time period, not a lot of people other than maybe Billy Robinson were working the British style here in the States. I mean, Bulldogs, of course, but theirs is more of a hard-hitting style.
And, it was just kind of weird because, it's not like the quote-unquote gay gimmick was a new thing in wrestling. That had kind of been around, but usually, people would play the effeminate gimmick, all the way through, and they usually weren't very tough guys. It was all just, chicken shit heel type stuff. But where Adrian, he does all this prancing and stuff around, and if you're a fan, it's the first time seeing him, okay, look at this guy. But then when it was time to go, the guy could shoot, probably take out anybody in whatever territory he was in. I mean, he was a legit tough guy, and I think that's what eventually won it over, and how he was able to actually be a baby face even in the late 80s in the South, despite, the times, if you will.
Yeah, that's a lot of is it fair to say when Adrian Adonis tried to do this gimmick, when Vince tried to give Adrian Adonis this gimmick, they didn't seem to understand that part of it.
Right, yeah. They totally missed the mark with Adrian Adonis.
And that's not a knock on Adrian Adonis. He's a hell of a worker, but they just didn't seem to understand that part of the gimmick.
Wrestler. yeah, he either never should have had that gimmick, or they should have allowed it to be played correctly. Because I don't know, the adorable Adrian. Besides him being Adrian and wearing pink, I mean, that gimmick was played just completely different and completely wrong, in my opinion. It is one of those things where, at that time frame in WWF, they did some really they just known to do some cheesy stuff like that too. But they did some really weird stuff, like they suddenly turned Mr. New York tough guy Adrian Adonis, who had tagged with Dick Murdoch, into this adorable character, and he's wearing dresses and coming out in stuffed bras that are getting ripped off by Hulk Hogan. And then you brought in Dick Slater, who was a top heel from Mid-South, and you make him a babyface called the Rebel, carrying a Confederate flag in the WWF. Like, how was that ever going to work? Like, just, for all their quote-unquote geniusness, those were just a couple of examples of things. It's like, this was doomed from the start.
Yeah. All right.
What can you tell us about Johnny Mantell for anybody who's not familiar?
Mainly a Texas mainstay back in the 80s. Spent a lot of years as just, I hate to use the word bland babyface, but it was fitting. Blue tights, white boots, kind of a bland look. Toward the end of the 80s and 90s, he grew his hair out and started doing a more heelish cowboy gimmick. He was in Global as well. Most of the Texas Indies. Did some world class. After that, he kind of disappeared for a while. Then he opened a wrestling museum in Texas, which seemed to turn out to be some kind of big scam, but that's not for me to go into.
Rasslin.
Yeah. But no, I liked him as a worker. He wasn't anything spectacular, more of a Scott Casey type, but he was fun to watch. And was it his brother or his uncle or something that was the booker down there for a long time, Ken Mantell?
Well, that's what I was about to ask. What if there was ever any defined relationship between Johnny Mantell and Ken Mantell? I assume they were related, but I've never heard it said like that's his brother. I don't know if it's one of those ambiguous ones like the Andersons, where sometimes they're brothers and sometimes they're cousins, and it depends on who you ask and when. But I know that none of them claim to be kin to Dutch. So
exactly. Let me see if I can find that out real quick.
But yeah, Johnny Mantell is one of those guys, and this was pretty prominent in Texas, where when you see him, when the show came back from a break or whatever, and you see him stand in the ring, like, all right, well, this isn't going to be just a over-the-top exciting match, anything flashy, but it's going to be a good solid match, and it's going to be entertaining. But like I said, with all the wild characters that came out of Texas in the 80s, he was not one of them, but he was always a good hand, as the guys say. He's getting the better of Adrian right now. He's firing up a little bit. What are we going to have the old ring my bell, as Gorilla Monsoon would always call that one there. Adrian sells it big. Oh. Adrian finally getting enough here. Fires up on him. Goodness.
Can't seem to find a quick answer to that Ken and Johnny question. Anyway.
All right. Well, that'll be the cliffhanger for this episode, folks. There's going to be a part 2 on Adrian Street where we look at some 86 and 87 stuff, and we'll try to have you an answer on that when that rolls around, whether it's me and Bob or me and whomever. So
big European uppercut.
Ron West there, who was well known amongst the Continental fans in Alabama and in Georgia. All right, Johnny's coming back here.
After those 2 European uppercuts, those were nasty.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never saw any of Adrian as a kid, so the first time I really remember the European uppercuts was Regal showing up in WCW in '93. So
I remember going to see him live at the Lavender Coliseum in Columbus for Continental in his first run when he was a heel, feuding with Wendell Cooley for the Southeastern title. That he took the white strap on the Southeastern title and painted it pink, and that was a very controversial move in 1986, and he was hated. And over time, he eventually ended up in a feud with Hustler Rip Rogers that saw him turn babyface, and he went from being absolutely hated. There you see Linda sprayed him in the eyes, as she was prone to do at times. Oh, big splash. 1, 2, 3. And Miss Linda was a big part of the Adrian Street presentation, and a lot of times played a hand in the finish, just like she did right there. Of course, she was his wife in real life, despite what the prancing would lead you to believe.
Yeah, you can definitely see where this gimmick would have gotten him a ton of heat, and I'm sure lots of stupid marks tried him and paid for it dearly.
Oh, yeah, he was not the one. But, yeah, I remember hearing just all kinds of horrible things screamed at him in Columbus back in the day. All right, better luck next time, Mr. Mantell.
You said that was from Continental?
No, this was from Mid-South.
Mid-South, all right.
Yep. All right, so still Mid-South here, and we're going to see him taking on Terry Taylor.
Mr. Personality.
That's right.
Sorry.
Well, Terry Taylor's unique. Like, he was a pretty solid babyface, pretty solid heel, but I was never a huge fan of him. Like, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and both guys were really heaping praise on him and talking about what big fans they were of Terry Taylor back in the 80s. And he was always just kind of there for me up into the Red Rooster debacle. Well, I don't know. What was your thoughts of Terry Taylor back in this time frame?
Exactly the same as yours. He was just a guy that was, I don't know. Yeah, he never did it for me. Very bland, very plain.
I mean, people, and even in the comments of some of our videos that we put on the channel of Buddy Landell for last month's Wrestler of the Month, always accuse, Buddy Landell of being a Ric Flair ripoff. And I get it. You call yourself Nature Boy and have bleach blonde hair, you're going to get some of that. But as a heel, you could definitely tell Terry Taylor was heavily influenced by Ric Flair as well, which is one of the reasons I preferred him as a babyface, because it felt a little less obvious.
Yeah, I can't think of a spectacular Terry Taylor match or any move that he did especially well. And the 5-arm was really stupid.
I mean, it was one better than the 4-arm,
that is true.
It's pretty
I
clever.
guess the computerized man of the 90s is my favorite version of Terry Taylor. So,
yeah, I actually did like Terrence Taylor, and I agree. I do think that was probably the best incarnation of Terry Taylor, because just Terry Taylor was bland as a babyface or a heel. And then obviously nobody wants the Red Rooster, which to me, and they don't cop to this. They don't cop that it was a rib on Terry, but like, I think the Red Rooster was more of a rib on Ric Flair than it was Terry Taylor. They tried to get him in '88, and he stayed with Crockett. And then next thing you know, Terry Taylor is strutting around and wearing a jacket that was similar to a Ric Flair robe. And it's been said that behind the scenes, Vince McMahon always said that Ric Flair strutted around like a banty rooster. I think just like how Akeem the African Dream was a rib on Dusty, and DiBiase's servant being called Virgil was a rib on Dusty, I think the Red Rooster was a rib on Ric Flair. But of course, nobody's going to own that this day and age.
That is true. They sure spent a lot of time ribbing people through gimmicks in WWF too, but
they did. And of course, Bruce Pritchard will swear, we're not going to spend money to rib somebody, but it was
okay.
There. You'll never convince me that Mike Jones being named Virgil is, Ted DiBiase's quote unquote manservant isn't a rib on Dusty Rhodes, whose real name was Virgil, which was lost on me as a kid. When I found that out years later, I was like, oh my God, that's freaking amazing. How funny.
Speaking of Dusty Rhodes, you've heard the story about Dusty and Terry Taylor on the airplane and why Terry Taylor never got a bigger push.
No, let's hear it.
That's probably my favorite Terry Taylor story, because I guess years later when they were in WCW, Terry Taylor had asked Dusty Rhodes why he never pushed him more. And apparently one night that they were on an airplane together and Dusty had just bought a Walkman, because it was the 80s and those were brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And Dusty had his Walkman on, and I guess Terry Taylor was sitting there next to him going, oh, look at me, I'm Dusty Rhodes, I'm a big fat pig. Oh, look at me, I'm Dusty Rhodes, I'm the American Dream. And Dusty pulled his earphone off and said, you say something? Terry said, no. And Terry kept doing that. And so years go by, and Terry asked Dusty, why you never pushed me? And he said, Terry, baby, that Walkman wasn't turned on.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah. So that's one of my, I think Cornette told that story in a shoot interview when somebody asked him about Terry Taylor. And I always thought that was a tremendously funny story.
That is a great story and completely believable. It's a lesson for you there, kids.
Yeah.
Make
Not
sure
that half the people
turn
listening
on
to
if
this
you're
know what a
gonna
Walkman is.
Well, you know, if they're, I promise you, if somebody's sitting watching old Adrian Street matches right now, they're probably close to our age or older. They know what a Walkman is.
All right, that's probably true.
The young punks they don't care about this. They should be, though. A lot of these young wrestlers should study guys like Adrian Street. And this would have been around the time. I don't know if it was the time or not. I guess we'll see who goes over here. But, you know, there was a brief time where Terry Taylor was booking Mid-South. I think it was after this. That didn't last too long because it was right around 86, right before they switched over to UWF. Terry Taylor was booking there for a while, and you can tell it because suddenly Terry Taylor starts getting interjected into everything, like just randomly, like the freaking, you know, Jake the Snake and Dick Slater feuding over the North American title, and suddenly Terry Taylor's involved for no good reason. And so,
nice. I wanted to point out that movie he was doing a minute ago where he stuck his leg over his head and then reached back to pull his hair for no apparent reason other than to just be a dick. I like it.
Yeah. I would have loved to have seen Street and Regal wrestle in their prime. But not just in England where they're just strictly wrestling. I'd like to see the Lord gimmick against the Exotic gimmick. Like if you could have done that in both their primes, I think that could have been a fun match and pretty competitive as far as the wrestling goes. But a lot of dick moves as well.
As you know, I'm a huge Regal fan, and yes, that would have been spectacular. And just Regal's facial expressions would have made the whole thing worth it.
Yeah, it seems like in later years, people started to appreciate Regal, but like even in the moment in the early 90s, one of my favorite, you know, matches on WCW pay-per-views was the Lord Steven Regal matches, especially when I liked when he had Dundee with him as Sir William.
Yes.
I like even now when I go back and watch those early 90s pay-per-views, not all of it's great, but whenever Regal comes on the screen, I'm like, okay, here we go. This is going to be good.
You're like, I've sat through Van Hammer and Johnny B. Bad. Now I get to watch something decent.
Yes, they're in that time where Johnny B. Bad opened every pay-per-view Clash of the Champions you could name. You had to get through that. Then you get to the Regal match, and you know he was usually working with, you know, Steamboat or, you know, you name it, and it was always a good match.
That's not
a good match out of Marcus Alexander Bagwell.
Not to stray too far off the Adrian Street topic, but yeah, the Regal Arn Anderson match from Super Brawl is one of my absolute favorites, where Regal starts off cheating, then Arn's like, "Let me show you how to cheat."
Yes, that was an excellent. And I'll tell you another match I loved, and I actually got to see them wrestle live in Tupelo, Mississippi at a house show. And this is what changed my perspective of this guy. And I know you dislike this guy because I had a lot of fun with him on the UWF stuff we did. But when Zbyszko came out of retirement from being an announcer and had those series of matches with Regal, they were freaking excellent.
I will not
Best
disagree
matches
with
I ever
that.
saw
Those were good
Zbyszko
matches.
have. Even if you go back to his young days against like San Martino, those matches with Regal are probably the very best matches I ever saw Zbyszko have. And like I say, I got to see him do a house show match in Tupelo.
Nice.
That was a little different than what they had on the TV series they had, and they were having a little more fun with it. Talking a little more smack and this and that. But such a great match, and it really raised my respect level for Regal. I was like, man, I've always thought Larry Zbyszko was just a boring, stalling, like overrated guy who really couldn't wrestle. But I was like, he can wrestle when he gets in there with the right person. So, oh my God, Terry Taylor's got a hold of Linda.
Well, that's going to make Street mad. Excuse me.
So, they did an angle around this time for the Mid-South television title, which I think that was when it was still like a Special Olympics medal or whatever for the championship, where Taylor was the champion, and for the finish, Adrian just kisses him directly on the mouth, and Taylor is so bumfuzzled by that Street's able to roll him up and win the title. And then the follow-up to that is Street was defending the title against somebody, and Taylor comes out and kisses Miss Linda, which flusters Street, and he ends up losing based off that. But
I mean, looking back on it, like none of this stuff would fly now, but in the 80s, it was a great way to get heat.
Oh my gosh, dude. Because Terry Taylor, regardless of how we felt about him as a wrestler, I mean, you go back and watch those Mid-South shows from that time, and the women's just squealed for Terry Taylor like they did the Rock and Roll Express and Fantastics and all those guys. I mean, the women loved him. And so, yeah, Street kissing him on the mouth, I mean, that was a heat finish all the way around because the women were appalled. Of course, the guys at the time were appalled. And it really got his character over as a heel, beyond shadow of a doubt. And of course, that was back in the day when Terry Taylor could roll up out there and just kiss Miss Linda against her will, and the crowd roared with approval. Nowadays
that was the biggest babyface move in the world.
Yeah, now he'd get canceled. But I mean, this has been
it's been a good
match so far.
Street's a pretty good bumper as well. Paying attention to that.
That was the thing is he was a legit tough guy and he could own his portion of the match. But when it came time to sell, he took good bumps and he was more than willing to sell when and where he needed to. Oh, the 5-arm. There it is. That's got to be it. 2, 3. That's it. Linda didn't make it.
I'll take Tito's forearm any day of the week.
Oh, no kidding. So maybe Taylor was booking around this time.
Where's your little red mohawk, Terry? Yes, terrific, Terry.
Another great gimmick we didn't mention. Terrific Terry Taylor. OT3.
Wrestling in its wonderful alliteration.
Yeah. And he made all his own gear, by the way.
Speaking of gear, look at that jacket.
Oh, my. Oh, my, Jesse.
What a maneuver. Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another. We were talking about British guys working in the States at the time, and he completely slipped my mind.
Yep. See, there's the big TV title
medallion.
I hated that. So stupid.
Probably cheaper than making a belt, though.
Oh, it's definitely cheaper than making a belt. And supposedly, the story goes that Bill Watts, has said in interviews that when they brought the TV title around in '84, of course, the Olympics were huge that year. And so they were playing off of people's fondness of medals in the Olympics. But so this would have been after and this may even be the match. I didn't pre-watch all these. This may even be the match where he may end up losing it thanks to Terry Taylor coming out kissing Linda. I don't know if that's this match or another one. But
way to
I
spoil
strategically
the
picked
ending.
this one because I don't know if it is or not. It may not be. We may be shocked that Street may win. Who knows? Sting may drop down from the ceiling. I mean, there's any
If
number
that
of
happens,
things
I'm done.
It's Sting is the only appropriate response to that, sir.
If that happens, I'm just going to tell everyone to drink Surge, and then I'm going off. I do like me some Chris Adams, so.
Well, like I said, I strategically picked these matches. Aside from Terry Taylor, some of these guys I knew, like Johnny Mantel, Chris Adams, but we had to mix some in. All right, so Linda's got him all perfumed up here. Get a little for the ref there. Randy Anderson, looking like Kyle Petty at this point, or Richard Petty, whatever, one of them Pettys. I think Kyle Petty, more like.
Yeah, it's Kyle.
Yeah.
Not yet driving the NWO car.
Soon.
That's a deep cut reference. So.
Yes. I eventually want to. I don't know whether he'll be the wrestler of the month or whatever, but I eventually want to watch one of these featuring Chris Adams.
Definitely.
Some of his stuff with Gino Hernandez as the dynamic duo down in Texas, and teaming with Von Erichs, him feuding with the Von Erichs, and for you younger fans, Chris Adams is responsible for training and getting Stone Cold Steve Austin in the business. That's probably his biggest mark on the wrestling business in the end.
Heck, he even had some really good matches during that late WCW run.
Yeah, that's what's crazy is, like, he was a top-level wrestler in these days, but by the time WCW came around, they were using him more or less for enhancement on Worldwide and Nitro and Saturday Night and all this, but he had some good matches amongst all that. So I suggest you go check it out if you get a chance.
If I have to guess, these two will work just a smidge stiff.
There's I don't think I put any of it in this, but I'm going to put some up on the channel of Adrian working for World of Sport over there, and there's also Chris Adams matches from over there too. We'll add some of those to the channel as well. So very different style, but
it would be interesting to see Adrian working in that.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as it's not against like Big Daddy or Haystacks, but
I've got a couple in the queue that is going to be going up on the channel probably in the next week or so. So
cool.
Be on the lookout for that, folks.
Working the hell out of that arm.
He is. Wrenching on that neck. Like I say, you see him, he comes out to the ring, and he's prancing around and all that, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this guy's such, if you're a smart fan, this guy's a gimmick, But man, once the wrestling starts,
oh yeah,
he can definitely hold his own, but so can Chris Adams.
The master of the super kick.
That's right. He is the original super kick guy in wrestling. Like he's the first guy I ever remember using a super kick. You'd see Stan Lane break out one just as a arbitrary spot here and there, but like it's the first guy I remember using it for a finish, and you being like, oh yeah, that would have knocked him out.
Stan would pull it out
of them.
Yeah, Stan would pull it out of his karate, but
when you got those educated feet, they know right when to do it. Jim Ross loved throwing that line out there. Stan Lane with his educated feet.
Good old JR using the same lines for 30 years.
Oh, you ain't kidding. Every time he'd say that as a kid, I would picture a foot walking across a graduation stage with a diploma stuck between their toes.
So who would you say is the best pure athlete in Mid-South?
Dr. Death Steve Williams, of course.
Oh, that's right.
By God.
He's a hoss. Nice. Right into prancing out of the throw. I like it. I like it.
Adam's like, I'm going to keep. Oh, there it is. Too close to the ropes, though.
No,
all jokes aside, Adams probably had the best super kick to this day of anybody.
Oh, yeah, I don't disagree. That going straight into the prance out of the roll, though, and doing it over and over. Like, I'm sure the fans were just more pissed off each time.
That's a
great spot.
Do it again, and then he just does it. He just fucking prances again. All right, here we go. He's pissed. Oh, that didn't work out at all.
That's a spot you hardly ever see anymore. The move out of the way, you crotch yourself on the top rope.
Yeah. The more of this old stuff that I watch, there's so many things like that you just don't see anymore. Simple stuff, not like,
I can't say I miss the stretch muffler all that much.
No, I hate that. Obviously, I'm saying more like the crotching yourself on the rope type thing. Other than, unless it's just something real obvious, you see it every now and then. There you saw the old enziguri, as they say. Oh, there it is.
Oh, yep, Gene spoiled it.
Terry Taylor's really giving it to her right now based on the alignment of their faces.
And it's getting super awkward because Adrian hasn't looked yet.
Adrian's like, look already, damn it. Adrian's like, did you kiss my old lady, you bloody wanker? He's like, you liked it, didn't you? Oh, you bitch. Oh, yeah, I forgot this aspect of it, too.
Oh, Jesus.
Adrian goes immediately to the domestic violence, which, that's how you get the heat, brother.
That certainly wouldn't fly today.
Hey, you let my old lady be kissing some dude on TV and see if they don't play out exactly like that.
You'd just be like, hey, she was on TV. Is she getting paid?
Like, Boyd Pierce, there's a lot of couches died for his terrible seats back in the day. Good Lord. There he is, the superstar.
That's an outfit, too.
It is. And it's what's funny is like,
stop. Gene, you got to wear one of the 3 or 4 outfits in the ring right now. Which one you picking?
Oh, God. I guess I'm going to wear Boyd Pierce's suit. That's sad when that's the best pick of the bunch. But I know I couldn't pull off Adrian or Linda's look there. And Dundee's suit is way too tight. So I'm going to have to go with Boyd Pierce's red ensemble.
Yeah, I say the referee doesn't count. So
yeah, Carl Fergie, the future king. But, like, Dundee's got a million of those outfits. But, like, to this day, if somebody brings in Bill Dundee now in 2023, it's always a picture in that purple jumpsuit he just had on. Always.
I see Adrian's gotten a little Road Warrior-y now.
Yeah, his look was all over the place in this day. But like I said, he made all that gear, and then later on, wrestlers could order gear from him. Well, I say he made it. Linda made a good bit of it. Little fun fact trivia. Memphis Monroe actually swapped a few emails with Miss Linda about making some gear for him, but she was too backed up at the time, and he needed it sooner, so he ended up going with someone else. But almost got some exotic Adrian gear made. It wouldn't have been quite to that level of coolness or whatever you want to call it, but look at Dundee there.
Certainly would not have wanted to see him dressed like that.
Yeah, I would have had to alter the gimmick a little bit, I think. He's just tied Dundee up. I got a chance to be around both of these guys. Dundee a lot over the years, Street a handful of times, but just imagining these two, what's probably being said back and forth in this match entertains me, just knowing how they were.
spending more time talking about the people in the crowd than the actual work.
That or just shit talking each other.
No.
These guys had a lot of matches. Like, they wrestled in Mid-South quite a few times. Then they had that feud in Memphis where Jim Cornette, in the very, very early stages of Cornette's career, was managing Street and Linda. And so there were handicap matches where Bill Dundee wrestled Adrian Street, Miss Linda, and Jim Cornette. And then there's one where it's Bill Dundee and referee Jerry Calhoun against Adrian Street, Cornette, and Miss Linda. We may have one of those matches in this compilation we're watching. I don't know. If not, I've got a couple lined up to go on the channel. But there may be one amongst all these. I don't remember now what I'll put on here. God, he's fish hooking. Look at that.
A little earlier, I saw Adrian go work on the fingers, which you didn't. I don't remember seeing small joint manipulations too much back in the day. So, other than, who was it? The one that got caught. Oh shit. The villain, whatever his name was, these last few years, used to do the finger breaking squad. Yeah.
Yeah, he brought that back for a while, but
then he got himself in trouble. But we won't talk about that. But no, I was interested. Like I said, I don't remember seeing much of that back in the 80s.
No, you really didn't. And like I say, Adrian was unique in that he used a lot of stuff that you didn't see other people using. Dundee clobbered him on that one.
Yes, he did.
And of course, Mid-South had this big resurgence in 85 and 84 and 85, I should say. And thanks to the booking of Bill Dundee, who came down from Memphis and took over the book and brought along the Rock and Roll Express and what would become the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette and a couple others, and really lit the place up. And Bill Watts had his two biggest years he ever had. And then they followed that up with a brief booking stint for Terry Taylor that didn't go well, and they replaced him with Ken Mantell and came to the Universal Wrestling Federation and did pretty well, but it was never to the heights that it was in 84 and 85.
Was that when Mantell left World Class and brought half the roster with him?
That's it. Yep. All of a sudden, out of the blue, you start seeing Iceman, Parsons, and the Freebirds, and all these guys show up in Mid-South. And like I say, it kind of had a bit of a resurgence there for a while, but then the economy got them. It wasn't really a booking issue. It was just the way of the world at the time. Well, look at that.
See, Dundee has some nice-looking punches.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, anybody that's a wrestler that wants to learn how to punch, watch Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler, two of the best punchers in the world. And all the thousands of matches they had in Memphis, you pick any one of them and you'll see some tremendous punches going on. Dundee's dressed almost like you'd expect Adrian to be dressed, with the gold tights and the silver belt and the gold boots, like
shiny blue pants.
Yeah, take it easy, Bowie.
Nice looking file driver.
Oh, Dundee took quite a few pile drivers in his day.
I don't know what that was supposed to be, but
it didn't work out.
Ain't kidding. He really does throw some fantastic looking punches. And you're right about Lawler too.
I've been on the receiving end of both Dundee and Lawler's punches quite a few times, and unlike the old secret to the Terry Funk punches, they're actually not that bad. There you see, Dundee gets the win. The old diving reverse crossbody.
The Kevin Von Erich special.
That's right. You'll be seeing one of those in an upcoming edition of OWF Worldwide Wrestling. If you want to check that out, folks, it's on the channel. Fun stuff.
Probably the best movie you'll ever see on that show.
Yeah, we immediately had that guy fired. We don't do that here, pal.
I mean, if you'd have missed the guy or like broke your ankle on the rope or something, it'd have been different. But
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Elizabeth.
Don't be looking at Elizabeth right now, Bob. This was supposed to be chopped off, but apparently got missed. So here we are.
Hey, it was good
Mid-South
to see her.
Coliseum in Memphis, Tennessee. Back when Macho was rocking the homemade rose before he started getting the big fancy sequin ones he got when he went to WWF. And yes, folks, it was the WWF at the time. I'll say it unapologetically.
That panda can kiss our ass.
That's right. Right now, Macho Man's thinking, yeah, his cape's a lot nicer than mine. Some bullshit.
I wish I had
Randy
a
Hill's
Slim Jim.
Yeah. He's like, but Elizabeth is prettier than Miss Linda, so we'll call her draw.
Arms, legs.
It's kind of like weird to even imagine Randy Savage wrestling anywhere but WWF. Like, I didn't see a lot of this as a kid. Like, by the time I started watching regularly, he was already, on the WWF. So going back and seeing him in Memphis and ICW and all that just feels out of place.
It's definitely odd.
So as you can see, we go through this whole song and dance every match. She takes off all his ring gear. She sprays him down with the perfume. And again, we're just getting the fans riled up. They're in the Mid-South Coliseum. Just wrestle! Come on, man! And those things seem like a little thing now, looking back on it, but like that kind of stuff got people riled up. Like, just fight him, sissy! Quit spraying him with perfume. I'm sure Macho Man's over on the mic saying something profound right now. Yeah, just like to remind everybody, we got Slim Jims in the concession stand. Yeah, snap into them.
I thought they just brawled in that concession stand.
Mostly. The key to a good concession stand brawl is to make sure you got a full, huge Sam's Club jar of mustard in there. What really sells it. Okay, Randy's sitting on top of the announce table over there, cutting this promo. Sure, he's probably saying something about Adrian that you couldn't get away with saying now. If I had
That's
to guess.
probably a good assumption.
We won't speculate what that was, but
I see where Macho learned hiding behind Elizabeth.
I like that. I want to use it. I can only attribute it to his size and height and such is why Adrian didn't make it to the WWF, because you would think that his gimmick would have been tailor made, and of course, as we pointed out earlier, they tried to somewhat recreate it with Adrian Adonis, but he was doing a lot of the shtick that Randy would go on to do there, and just the whole character. And, of course, the musician aspect of it, he put out his own album before the whole wrestling album and all that stuff. So he could have hit on
the problem is, if they'd have signed him while Adrian Adonis was there, one of them would have had to have changed their name to Gregory.
That's true. He would have had to come in as Exotic Edward Street or something. Because Adrian Adonis was there first, so second man out is the odd man out. So.
And you obviously can't tell them apart.
Oh, poor Adonis.
Or poor Lance Cade or Shane Helms or
Gregory Helms. God help us. Of course, besides adorable Adrian Adonis, someone who they even Macho Man said he's going to have a seat. Wait for this to play out, but someone that they used to copy Adrian Street even more. And I understand that Adrian actually had he went down to Florida and spent some time with Adrian. Rico Constantino at one point was doing an exact ripoff of Adrian Street. The gear, the painted face, the whole bit. He just didn't have a female valet with him.
Or, most of the talent. He didn't have that either.
Hey, he was an American goddamn gladiator, sir. Don't you disparage.
That is true.
He was an athlete and a half. Did you watch that thing on Netflix about American Gladiators?
I saw one of there were 2 documentaries that came out. I saw the ESPN one, but not the Netflix one.
The Netflix one was better, although it was multiple episodes. It was probably more than it needed to be, but it was, I thought it was better, but it's interesting.
So I'll give you the fact that Rico could probably beat Adrian in the joust, but I'm going to assume that Adrian was a better wrestler.
Yeah, I'm sure Adrian could take him in wrestling, but yeah, you get him on the joust and Rico's in his element.
This has been a spectacular amount of stalling to start this match.
See, this is how it used to be, especially in Memphis. Now, I love Memphis wrestling as much or more than the next guy. And I was having a conversation with Ray Russell, the guy that I'm going to eventually be doing these Memphis 85 podcasts with. And I was like, I love Memphis wrestling. I was like, but watching a bunch of it recently, I forgot just how little wrestling there was on Memphis wrestling. Like it was all about the promos on TV. It was all about, brawls and mostly fights. Like you did not see a lot of wrestling. Once this gets going, you'll probably see more wrestling in this than your typical Memphis match. But it was all built around angles, stories, and a lot of gaga, as Pat Patterson would say. Pitches him out because that would have been a DQ if Linda didn't distract the ref.
That's quite a bump to a floor with no mats.
Yeah. So as you've seen so far in the matches we've watched, Adrian made sure that Linda was a big part of the presentation and was heavily involved from the pre-match festivities to, causing, distractions for just spots or finishes and kissing Terry Taylor to cause him to lose, all that sort of thing.
Well, other than that last part, that is all fantastic because that's what managers were for, and that's why they're sorely missed today.
But even the ones that they do have now aren't properly used. I guess it's because they don't really know their role or how to be used. But and if you notice, we talked about how Savage went on to use a lot of Adrian and Linda's shtick in WWF. He never really did the part where anybody lip-locked Elizabeth for an uncomfortable amount of time.
And Elizabeth didn't really attack people, but she served as a distraction.
That's true. I would have liked to have seen Elizabeth just doing something like that, just mauling somebody behind the ref's back. I have to think, though, around 86 or so, had Elizabeth kissed somebody outside on the floor for a long time, Savage probably would have reacted a lot like Adrian did, but not out in the front of the crowd, just in the dressing room.
You ain't wrong. But yeah, no, I mean, I truly believe that's one of the huge things. I mean, yeah, there's a few managers. I mean, you've got Heyman who doesn't do anything. You've got Prince Nana who dances. And I mean, there's not like somebody that did what Bobby Heenan used to do. God, it would be such a huge advantage to somebody.
They were managers were such a huge part of things back, in the 70s and 80s. And, a big part of the presentation, they were able to do promos for guys who couldn't cut promos. And I mean, like in Memphis here, where they had the weekly Monday night shows, one of the great things, I think one of the smartest things they ever did is you basically, your main feud was Jerry Lawler versus Jimmy Hart. And
Mm-hmm.
he was able to do that for 2 years with Jimmy Hart rotating out different heels to represent him. So it was a fresh matchup all the time, but you still had the heat between Lawler and Jimmy Hart to play off of. But the matches were different because you were constantly bringing in different heels for him to manage. And Lawler could beat them, but as long as Hart did something to get his heat back, you were still rolling right along, you know.
Exactly. And they ran the Von Erichs feuded with Gary Hart and whoever Gary Hart had. I mean,
Yep.
technically, if you look at it, Hogan feuded with the Heenan family. I mean, or whoever, but.
And you could bring people in from other territories, and even if the fans didn't know who they were, you bring somebody into Texas, the fans have no clue who they are. But if they're associated with Gary Hart, boom, they've got a heat right out of the gate. If they're associated with Akbar, you know, if they come into Memphis and they're with Jimmy Hart, then they're automatically hated. You didn't really have to even build them up because they just automatically, that heat transferred onto them.
And that was the same thing. You brought a guy in WWF. I mean, for the most part, like a few times it didn't work, but you stick him with Bobby Heenan and they're already at least in an upper mid-card role.
Yep.
You have him squash a few guys and Heenan cuts a few interviews for him and they're made.
Aside from the missing link, that usually worked pretty well.
Yeah. Or the Red Rooster.
Yeah. Paid off for the Brooklyn Brawler, that's for sure.
Okay, maybe him too, but why I said for the most part.
But hey, Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect, Stud Bundy, down the line.
Exactly.
King Harley Race.
Harley's the best.
I was watching a couple of those Texas death matches he had with Hulk Hogan recently, and it's like, man, if you go back a few years before that, when Harley was NWA champion and the epitome of the wrestler's wrestler, could you have ever imagined a few years down the line he would come out dressed as a king and have a Texas death match with Hulk Hogan?
Yeah, doing weeble wobble bumps for Hogan.
Yes. So this spot here, as a matter, well, not exactly that.
Oh yeah,
Hogan, if you spank my ass again tonight, I'll kill you, brother.
My favorite version of that bump ever. There's a match out there between Barry Windham and Terry Funk. And Windham hits, you know, every time he hit Funk, Funk could do the seesaw spot. And they must have done it 26 times. Terry must have just been feeling especially goofy that night. And he just kept doing it over and over and over again. To the point where you're like, all right, stop. And then it got funny again.
Yeah. And the funny thing is to watch like Wyndham's face, because he's just like, God damn it. Like, it's almost like a rib on him, you know. It's like, how long is he going to keep going with this? He's going to look stupid if he stops, but it looks silly that he's continuing to do it. Love Terry Funk. He could take anything, no matter how absurd it was, Terry Funk could make it work.
Exactly. And Barry Windham is one of my favorite wrestlers too, so I love that match. Is she running in high heels? If so, I'm damn impressed.
Yeah, she's got some. They're not super high, but they're bigger heels than I could run in.
You just need more practice.
I can't run in flat shoes, but.
Oh no, and you're absolutely right about Terry Funk. You could, no matter what he did, it worked because he was Terry Funk.
Spray that damn perfume in his eyes.
Oh.
I can't imagine in their later years if you would have saw like Terry Funk against Dick Murdoch, the kind of silliness that would have prevailed in that.
Did we get the DQ off the perfume there?
Yeah. I think we'd already gotten counted out or something before that, but.
Gotcha. Nice hat idol.
It's Austin Idol with that goofy hat on. I was somewhat of a fan of Austin Idol back in the Memphis days, and then I met him later in life, and I haven't been much of a fan since.
You can tell that thinking highly of himself is not a gimmick.
No, it is not a gimmick. Yeah, I got a couple of stories about interacting with him that I'll tell you sometime that just cured me of any fandom I had of Austin Idol.
I actually just met him for the first time recently, and he was in awe of the fact that everyone at the show, or all of the fans at the show, he was like, yeah, everybody here should be wrestlers. They're all bigger than me. I was like, wow, nice way to call all the fans here fat. All right, where is this, a Memphis show?
This is Continental. We're
all right.
Birmingham. Mike Jackson is the ring announcer, and Alan Martin looks to be the referee. I think that's who that is. Action Mike Jackson. Still wrestles to this day. And at this point, he was a ring announcer. At this point, they were using him as a ring announcer in Continental because they didn't think he was a believable wrestler going over on people, and yet he was on Impact last year.
Is he still the Alabama Junior Heavyweight Champion?
You bet your ass he is. He's got a belt to prove it. And there you see Idol with the Southeastern title. He's got his chaps on for some reason.
Does that title have spikes on the top of it?
It's a crown, but at a glance it looks like spikes. But yeah, when you see it up close, it's one of the ugliest belts that's ever existed.
Gotcha.
In my opinion, at least.
I mean, it can't be worse than most of the modern WWE titles, but...
Oh, God. No kidding. I hate every one of them. Sit down, dipshit. This is a TV show. How did that shot stay in for that amount of time?
Like that damn girl on that OWF show we taped recently.
I mean, you expect that on OWF, but not so much on Continental, but... Ron Fuller wasn't going to spend money on editing. Ron Fuller has the same opinions on editing that I do. Like, I ain't got time for that shit. Let's leave it in.
I'm not sure what he was pantomiming there, but
whatever it was, it upset Austin Idol. Speaking of editing, I didn't realize there was this much talking at the beginning of this match, or we would have edited all this out since we don't have the sound up. But
I think he called him a wanker and a ponce. And
I was like, if I knew what any of those words meant, Daddy, I'd be pissed.
That is quite a bow he's got tonight.
Idol's like, I didn't show up to this show to be insulted. That's where me and him went off the rails the second time I met him. I was going around with a camera interviewing wrestlers at a show. I was wrestling as Memphis Monroe, but as Gene, I was going around before the show interviewing some of the wrestlers out where they were signing autographs. And I was about 6 or 8 feet away from Idol. I didn't think he could hear me. And I was like, hey, look, Austin Idol showed up. What do you mean I showed up? What is that supposed to mean? We had a little altercation there on camera, and then he come and confronted me again in the dressing room where I was getting dressed for my Memphis Monroe shit. He's like, brother, what do you mean? What do you mean Idol showed up? Why wouldn't I show up? I'm thinking the only thing Austin Idol's been known for the past 25 years is being a no-show. I mean, he's no-showed more than George Jones, and you're going to act fucking appalled that I pointed that out.
That's funny.
It was surreal. I'm sitting there getting berated by Austin Idol as sitting next to me is Bushwhacker Luke that I'm getting ready to wrestle. And he's sitting there just tying his boots, kind of snickering. And then I was like, dude, I was just making a joke. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. Well, that makes me look bad, brother. That's not cool, man. Don't do stuff like that. All right, man, my bad. He walked away, and Luke goes, bloody hell, mate. He's no-showed more shows than he showed up for. I'm like, I know, right? He's like, started laughing. Oh, Street pitched him in the ring there.
Oof. Maybe Street doesn't like him either.
Probably not. Austin Idol's not well liked by a lot of the guys, from my understanding.
That is quite a hairpiece that he's wearing tonight. He kind of looks like the Purple Rooster. So,
which is what he probably would have ended up being had he been brought to WWF. Like, well, pal, we've already got an Adrian, but we don't have a Purple Rooster.
That's good shit, pal.
Good shit, pal. Damn it. Oh, the old 69 pin here. That didn't work. Well, I'll say this. He's getting more offense in on Austin Idol than I've seen in one. Oh, here we go, brother. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, Idolmania's about to run away. If he gives him the U finger, I'm done.
I don't want to do the U. He'll do the me, and then he'll.
Yeah, right.
I gotta say, Idol had some decent punches as well.
Yeah, he did. We
spent
the whole match shitting on him, so let's compliment him.
Yeah. I see Linda's reaching in the purse. He's about to get messed up here.
Was that a roll of quarters?
It looked like something along those lines. Nuts or quarters or something. Oh, you swung too high, Adrian. There's no way that was going to connect. Oh, the old Tito Macho Man Intercontinental title finish. 1,
how many years?
2, 3.
And he had to kick out on the pin just to make himself look good.
Exactly. Even getting hit with a foreign object, he's not just going to straight up lose. So, yes, that's the ugly white Southeastern title belt that would eventually be pink within a couple of weeks.
Oh, I gotcha.
And then Wendell Cooley was mad. He was having to carry around a pink belt, so that's when they got a new Southeastern title.
Yeah, that is ugly as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's not modern WWE title ugly, but it's pretty ugly.
Yeah. I wouldn't even want to win a title if I was in WWE, just so I wouldn't have to carry the ugly ass belt around.
They all look like hubcaps.
Yeah. I hate that new Intercontinental title.
It's the worst.
All right, so we're back here in Continental.
The hell is that?
Had a dress on a mannequin over there. That I think this is a loser wears a dress match. Big and Southern, because back in the South in the '80s, one of the worst things that could happen to a fella is to wear a dress. And of course, times have changed. That's all I'm going to say about that.
You need to find me a match where the ring mat says Renegade Rampage.
Oh, we can do that. There's plenty of Memphis matches with that on the old Renegades Rampage. You thought the AWA Team Challenge series was contrived and convoluted. Holy cow. That damn Renegades Rampage shit went on for 4 months, and people were coming and going from the territory, and they're just randomly announcing points from matches that clearly never happened. Of guys have points that's never even been in the territory, and oh my god! And of course, me as a kid, 10 years old, was trying to keep track of it all and make sense of it. Talking to you, Bob.
I didn't do it.
Linda's on crutches tonight.
So why did Wendell Cooley never become a bigger star, Gene?
Well, that is the topic of great debate. I heard some guys talking on a podcast recently. They were talking about UWF or Mid-South, I should say, in 1985, and his tag team with Al Perez, where they were Mid-South Tag Team Champions, and they were carrying on about how great Al Perez was, and they thought Wendell Cooley wasn't that good, and they don't understand people's fandom of him. I'm kind of the opposite. I think Al Perez was decent in the ring, but he didn't have an ounce of freaking charisma ever. Anytime I ever saw him wrestle, I thought, he kind of overachieved for what he was, in my opinion. Where Cooley wasn't the best in the ring, but he had a lot of charisma and he was really over. I come back and put a comment on their thing, talking about how over Cooley was in Alabama, because I've seen it live, and the only thing I really can figure is Cooley didn't venture out of the South until I think it was 1990. He finally went to WCW, and at that point, he had knee surgery, and his knees were pretty bad. And he come in, and you can go on YouTube and find there's a few squash matches he did, and then he was out. And that's the closest he had to cup of coffee in the big time, as Macho Man would say. Now, he did in later years, I'm thinking like 1992, 3, somewhere in there, him and Frankie Lancaster wrestled the Bushwhackers on like a Superstars of Wrestling taping as a tryout that never went anywhere, because after Continental and everything dried up, him and Frankie Lancaster went to Puerto Rico and were a tag team called the Heartbreakers as heels and had a pretty good run down there as champions. And I guess that's the biggest thing he did outside of, Alabama and the Mid-South and Memphis.
I would say I certainly don't remember that WCW. Well, I mean, you said cup of coffee, but
yeah,
were they
it was a couple
televised?
of squash. They were. I didn't see them because it was on like WCW Pro and shit like that I didn't necessarily follow closely. But yeah, they're on YouTube. They're like, he teamed with Alan Iron Eagle against like the State Patrol, and then I forget who it was he beat, some jobber, and then he was out. I had never seen that Bushwhacker match till just recently. Somebody sent it to me, and I was like, holy cow, I didn't realize Cooley even wrestled a match for WWF. But it was one of those deals where they did one of those marathon Superstars tapings in Birmingham, where they would have 47 matches. And you would see guys like that, Davey Rich and different random people pop up and like, oh, yeah, I know who that is. And they would get squashed and move on about their lives. But
nice looking knee drop.
I think Cooley probably could have did all right, and he would have been a lower card, mid card guy in WCW. I don't know that he would have did well in WWF. Ironically, he started out in Texas as Rick Casey, as an alleged cousin of Scott Casey, and I figure had he went to WWF, he would have done just about as well as Scott Casey did, kind of in that. Not quite a enhancement guy, but you pretty much knew when you saw him he was probably going to lose, but it was going to be a decent match. But,
unless he was facing a jobber, he was going to lose.
Yeah, unless he's wrestling Jose Luis Rivera or, Steve Lombardi. He pretty much knew he was taking an L that night.
Gotcha. That knee drop he threw earlier was nice looking.
A lot of people get offended at my take on Al Perez. Where are you at on Al Perez?
I like Al Perez, but I don't totally disagree with you. I don't... Move-wise, I think he was fine. Like, I don't think he was... Like, there's charisma doing your moves, and there's charisma on the mic. Like, I think in-ring-wise, he was fine, but he couldn't talk, and that's what killed him. Like, I mean,
mechanically, he was a good wrestler, but I'm just saying, like, he had no charisma. He couldn't talk, and there was nothing exciting about watching his matches. It was like, yeah, well, that was a good match. But, he came to WWF and had a short little brief few matches there, and nothing stood out about his matches. But, I can't say anything really stood out about his matches anywhere. And then, of course, the famous story of how they wanted him to be the Black Scorpion, and he refused, and it ended up being Flair, which thank God, because can you imagine if that would have that would have been the big payoff? Sting unmasked the Black Scorpion. It's freaking Al Perez, and everybody's like, "What? The jobber guy who was champion in Texas for a little bit when Texas was on its ass?"
Hey, Al Perez fiddles while world class burns, my friend.
Well, that's a great headline. They're missing the boat, if you ask me, not having him show up on Raw as Seth Rollins' dad at some point. I mean, that's the thing that stands out to me. You go back and look at any picture of Al Perez from the 80s and put it next to a picture of Seth Rollins. They look like they would definitely be related.
That is not untrue.
If Jimmy Golden can come in and be Jack Swagger's dad, then Al Perez could do some kind of segment as Seth Rollins' dad. As long as they ain't have him dress like a freaking goof like Rollins does.
Oh, come on. He wants to have his 70-year-old ass come out there in a paisley flare robe and whoa, or whatever the hell that is.
Cooley just got sprayed in the eyes with something, of course.
Why did he not get DQ'd for pitching the ref across the ring is my question.
It's a good question. I don't know if this was a no DQ. We'll say this was a no DQ match.
All right, then.
I don't know. This is what happens when you watch it with no sound. You lose some of the context. And maybe because the referee's so tall, he's unusually tall. He's like, yeah, you can throw me around. I can take it.
Maybe he wants to wear the dress.
Whoa, did you see,
what
see
the
that
hell was that
maneuver there? That alone should have got him a job somewhere. Look at that bulldog. Gordon Soley always called the Oklahoma Stampede, and that drove me up the wall that he would call a bulldog an Oklahoma Stampede.
Generic babyface finisher, 80s #1, the bulldog.
All right, so now he's going to put the dress on Adrian Street because, a guy that dresses like Adrian Street is clearly going to be offended by wearing a dress.
Exactly.
It's like Adrian's like, I wore a dress here tonight. I don't care.
Is there enough time left in this video to name every 80s guy that used the bulldog as a finisher?
Probably not. But let's just sum it up by saying Sam Houston used the bulldog as a finisher, and that's representative of every other person that used the bulldog, such as Kendall Windham, young Dustin Rhodes. Oh, she's like, you're not putting a dress on him, even though that's the dress he wore to the arena tonight. Oh, now here comes the heat, Bob.
Are they going to put the dress on him even though he won?
That's right.
Ah, sheesh.
That's how you used to get the heat, is you lost, but then you cheated, and then you put the gimmick on the guy that won, and now he's humiliated for the rest of his life because he wore a dress in Birmingham, Alabama in 1986. His friends won't let him get it. And they just had to rip that.
They just tore the dress open so they don't have to put it on him. Tremendous. Well, that's probably why he never made it to the big leagues, because he wore a dress.
Yeah, Vince McMahon, like, we don't have dress wearers up here, pal. Adrian Adonis cornered that market. Now they're putting makeup on his face. Look at this. This is the ultimate humiliation. Ugh, smeared lipstick all over his lips. Sure, Kaylee's like, you son of a bitch.
They've turned him into Wendy Cooley. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah, this is probably why his career never recovered. Bill Watts wasn't having him back after this.
Even though it looks far more like a poncho than a dress.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here today to watching some great Adrian Street footage. And join us again on December 23rd when we'll be back for more from the exotic Adrian Street, featuring matches from 1986 and 1987.